I welcome you to this Saturday morning, July 26, 2025. Um, I want to ask, first of all, if there are any questions from last week or anything that came across your mind or someone brought to you as a question. Anyone?
This is for Mel. I do. With France, with Macron announcing that Gaza would be, the Palestinian would be recognized as state, how does that affect things?
I don't know yet. And the reason I say that is because um, the U.S. has already said that it means nothing. So the question becomes, how do they plan to enforce that? How do they plan to simply, what are they going to do? If they recognize them as a state, then how does that affect the starvation that's taking place? I think that's more of a question.
That was and spiritually, what does it mean? Is that a sign that we are moving also in the
Well, I,
change?
that's hard to say for me anyway.
Okay.
I say that is because I'm very aware of the manipulative ways of Europeans and the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know whether that is being said or done um, because of the influence that Catholicism has in France. I don't know whether it's being done because Macron is trying to make a statement because things are not necessarily going his way. So I don't know yet. It's just too early to tell, I think.
All
It's
right.
too
Well,
early.
thank you.
Anyone else or any comments about that or questions? Is there,
Would it be wrong? Would it be wrong to maybe suggest what we would like to see happen from it?
oh no, not at all. Not at all. And I welcome that. The reason I say that, Ron, is because um, the decision by the U.S. and Netanyahu, by Trump and Netanyahu, has been made to finish the job, as Trump puts it. And that means clearing them out, no matter what it takes to do it, so that they can make it a result. They are very serious about that.
Yeah, yeah. I know.
Yeah, so I don't think it would be wrong at all. I'm sure that all of us want the same thing, and that is for the people to be treated like humans, and for the starvation to end, and for medical attention to be given to the people who are in need of it, bringing an end to the genocide that's taking place there. See, this is the thing. When you look, when we go back to the reason that the United Nations was formed, the United Nations, the IMF, and World Bank, they were formed for the benefit of Europe, or Europeans, I should say, in 1945. And the reason the council, the Security Council, was set up the way that it is because European nations, inclusive of Russia and now also inclusive of China, have, no matter what the UN passes, it only takes one vote from the Security Council to veto it. And the only nation of color is Chinese that sits on the Security Council. And I think that happened not too long ago. So what am I saying to you? I'm saying to you that the United Nations was established to rebuild Europe, and in order to rebuild Europe, they needed money. And what they did, they also used the United Nations as a cover for them going in and taking the resources from Africa in order to rebuild Europe. Africa was the main um, continent that they had their sights on because of the materials that they needed and the money that they could make from it. It was never organized for anything other than that. And that is the reason that regardless of who is the United Nations, the president of the nation, or whatever they call him, um, has no power, it's because of the veto power of the Security Council. And if there was any other nation doing to another nation what Israel is doing, they would have been condemned already. The next thing is that the only reason that NGOs were set up through the United Nations and through other countries was for the express purpose of building schools and setting up clinics in areas that were rich with minerals, so they could keep an eye on who was mining the minerals and keep an ear to the ground to hear who is planning to nationalize their minerals. And all of this, all of these NGOs were covering for people like MI6, CIA, all of these intelligence agencies, and all of them, as we all know, are for the benefit of the country that's organized them. Also keep in mind that the CIA was organized in 47, I believe. 47. And in 48, Mossad was established, with both of them having the same interests and same goals. So I see all of that to say, in order for this to change, this meaning what's happening in Gaza is going to have to come through the desires of humanity. It's going to have to be done spiritually based upon what's in the macro, because dependency on any agency is is not going to get it. Does that make sense, Ron?
Yes, sir, and that's what I wanted you to say. I don't expect it to come through an agency.
Right. Well, I had to explain that
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
so that we could see.
That's yeah, yes, and I appreciate it greatly. That's the whole point. I don't think the agency or any of those political means are stronger than what we're doing. That's all I wanted to get across. So
Okay.
how it happens is okay.
Yeah. And I want people to understand how the United Nations functions.
That was really helpful because I've never had seen it or heard it that way, and that makes a lot of sense now.
Thank you. And all of this is tied into um, Christianity, all of it. And in a few moments, unless there are questions that lead us in another direction, I want to talk about that for a little while. Any other questions or comments, Ron? Anyone?
Hey, Pastor, this is Charles.
Yes, sir.
Seems like Africa plays a big player in this world by other countries, but the other country, instead of seeing Africa as a big player, they see Africa where they can just rape and take whatever they want.
You're right.
and the hell with them.
That's exactly the attitude, Charles. If it were not for the minerals in Africa, there would be no such thing as quote unquote modernization. The resources in Africa is what keep Europeans wealthy. Regardless of what type of business they in, it doesn't matter. Everything that they do, everything, all the riches that they receive have their roots in Africa. That's just the reality of it. So how did it get to that? Christianity. That's how it got there. Any other questions or comments?
So good Grand Rising, everybody. So the whole of the concept of capitalism, even today, is built on Africa.
Yes.
That is wild
Yes.
in terms of the fact that they get rich and Africa gets poorer and poorer.
Yes. Capitalism was truly brought into existence to benefit Europeans, period. Because if you look at the principles of capitalism, I'm not going to get technical, just the basic principle of capitalism is competition as opposed to interdependence. And the competition is supposed to be a catalyst that promotes growth and efficiency. However, that only applies when you are a European male owning European businesses. Example is this. When the banks ripped everybody off, they were determined to be too big to fail. General Motors, the same thing. However, the mom and pop store does not have that kind, does not receive that kind of benefits from the government. Government welfare is called subsidies. When you think about subsidies, only time you hear subsidies is when they'll talk about McDonald's, GM, all these major corporations who the government is subsidizing, which means that they are receiving welfare from the government. The only people in this country who are capitalists are poor people. Wealthy people are socialists. If you don't believe that, look at the big, beautiful bill and see what's in it. Everything in that bill goes to the wealthy. And you may say, but the waitress and waiters are getting free tax-free tips. That only lasts for 3 years. That's a sugar high in order to get them through the next 3 years, so that when it ends, it would be another administration in office. However, the permanent things go to wealthy people. So when they talk about dictatorships, oligarchs, they're talking about socialism for white people, socialism for wealthy white men. They are not talking about anything that's going to benefit the poor. Does that make sense, Arden?
Yeah, yeah. And they get their resources from wherever they can get them, leaving those people poorer.
Yes, absolutely. So that the whole reason for the structuring of this thing called capitalism was to benefit white males. Now, the socialism, it depends on where it is and how it is put into place. Because socialism or communism does not necessarily benefit everybody in the country. Because the people at the top of the pyramids are the ones who benefit from socialism more so than anyone else. And China, I don't care what they call themselves, they are capitalists. And they are in the game for the same reason that Europeans are in the game, and that's to make money off of indigenous people who whose minerals they need in order to make themselves rich. And the difference is that Russia and China goes into Africa as presenting themselves as being one who wants to help Africa get on its feet. And Europeans go into Africa under the United Nations and NGOs. And Christianity is what leads the way in Africa in terms of conditioning the people to accept whatever is presented to them. Any questions or comments about that? Okay. Any questions about anything?
Pastor, I got one more question, and then I'll listen to everybody else's question.
Okay.
The thing, I mean, I feel sorry for myself. I feel sorry from all the things I used to hear bad about Africa and the places they show you how poor Africa is, and the way they say United States go in there and do this and they help Africa. I mean, I didn't never thought that my country, I mean, Africa, was so rich and so, I mean, everything came from our knowledge and technology and stuff made this world go around. I mean, I always thought Africa didn't have anything to offer until I've been learning more about it and the way you've been teaching us more about it. So I appreciate it, man. All the things that you're saying.
Thank you. And that's been that's the goal. That was the goal. Africa is not poor. The people are poor. Africa itself is rich. It's the wealthiest continent on the face of the earth. But the people are poor. I want to say one other thing about that, unless there are other questions about it. Right now, especially in Southern Africa, there is an argument, especially in the West, in European nations, about the reallocation of land. The people who are Europeans, and I'll use South Africa because we've heard more about it. The people who are Europeans are upset because there are talks going on as to how to reallocate the land. And they're talking about their farms. They are arguing, as they did under some other African leaders, Mugabe was one, about the reallocation of land. Well, first of all, not one European in Africa has a right to claim any land. I don't care how long they've been there. Not one. If you come to where I live, if you come to Santa and you take all of our property and the question becomes, do you own the property? Because you stole it from me. The answer is no, you don't own it because you stole it, right? Right. So it doesn't matter how many generations of your children live on this land, it is still not theirs because they stole it, because you stole it from the beginning. So you don't own it. Your offsprings don't own it. It's still my property. You just brutalized, or you just killed the people in my generational line who makes efforts to claim that property. So no European in Africa owns any property, and to reallocate that property, that land, should be done no matter what it takes to get it done. Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me.
So what I'm saying, that when you hear the arguments that's coming from the US and other countries trying to protect South Africans and their farms, they stole the land. They murdered, they committed genocide in order to get the land. So they own absolutely nothing in Africa. They did not purchase it, they stole it. So what conditioned Africans to settle for that? Two things. What do you think one of them is? Anybody? Any one of you, what do you think one of the things is? It's two things that condition them. Why are we silent?
Christianity.
Christianity and the gun. Those are the two things. Are there any other questions or comments?
I have a question. Where
Huh.
does Switzerland fall under the European system too, in the sense of how they treat others?
Yes.
Okay.
Swiss cares about Swiss. That's it. They're no different than England. Does that help? Or does that answer your question?
It clears my mind, yes.
Okay. Christianity. How is it? Well, let me preface this by saying, you heard me mention, I think last week, I said, mentioned that I was reading a book that Sheldon had given me. And in reading that book, do I want to go there right now? Not yet. Last week, the end of last week, I went to Philadelphia. And I felt like I had to go to Independence Hall. I knew I had to be in that area, but I did not know the reason. And when George, my brother, took us to that area. Levon went with us, George's wife. And when we got there, Levon says, you know what? I've never seen the Liberty Bell. I've never been down here. And I was walking, trying to feel where I was supposed to be along with them. And we finally went into the structure where the Liberty Bell is. And as we walked through it, I felt the energy when we got to a certain space in that building. It was very strong, but I didn't understand why. After having left the building and gotten back to the house, I believe it was back to the house when I first experienced it, I understood the reason that I had to go. And that is because I needed to feel the energy in that space. And it had to be the energy of the cosmic mother in terms of Levon being there. And I say this because if she had been there before, I don't know whether we would have gone into the building or not. Now, let me tell you what happened with the energy. When I looked back at it, when we first went there years ago, there was a section in there now that wasn't there then. And as you come through the building from the front and move towards the Liberty Bell, there's a lot of history there on placards on the wall and photographs. And it starts with the beginning of the Revolutionary War, and it trails off to the end of it. However, the thing that's there now that was not there when we went was an in-depth look at enslavement right in the middle of the Revolutionary war information that was being given. And the majority of all of the African history that's in there now was not there when we were there the first time. And as we stood there reading, when I looked back at it, I feeling the energy, I knew that energy had to be shared with femininity. It had to become one. Now, what it is birthing is a response to what happens July 4th, 2026, the 250th year of this country. I get home, and last night I read an article based upon Trump's preparations for our next July, and his focus is on DEI at the at Independence Hall. In other words, his efforts are to pull everything out of Independence Hall that relates to Africans and Native Americans, which is a very small part of the information there. So what I'm saying to you is none of our movements are without purpose. And the movement that we are experiencing, notice the energy around you. I believe with everything in me that the trip to Philly was not so much to relax as it was to relax as we work. Does that make sense? And the work was the experience that we had at Independence Hall. Now, right now, we have an obligation to make sure that we stay focused on the environment around us and stay in tune with who we are because of the energy that is going to present itself, which means that a strong presence of the ancestors presenting themselves in a way that gets our attention, even though you may not understand the reason at that moment. It may not be shown to you, but your understanding of it may come through someone else in just a general conversation. So here we are in the midst of something that started as a result of Christianity. And that is everything that's wrong with the world had its genesis in Christianity, And when Christianity could not make it happen, the gun did. They did it through violence, through murder. And what I wanted to talk about this morning is what was triggered in me as I was reading this book, and I had gone through it before it triggered me. And the triggering of it was very strong after we left Independence Hall. I understand now the reason the leadership of Africans in Africa is so brutal and so manipulative. I understand it now. I understand why we are Christians. I understand that. I even understand the depth of the damage of Christianity and how murderous Christianity is. And I'm going to say something that's going to make some people uncomfortable, but it's simply the truth. And if we continue to embrace Christianity, we are embracing all the guilt that goes along with it, all the murderous energy that goes along with it. It is no different than someone saying that I voted for Donald Trump, but I don't support racism. I don't support deportations. I don't support the bill that take health care away from people. If you voted for Trump, you have embraced everything that Trump does because he let you know what he was doing. If we embrace Christianity, we know what Christianity did around the world. We are embracing all the genocide and everything else that it represents. Any questions about that before I continue? Any comments? Are you able to see that?
Yeah, my comment is, Pastor, I'm glad you brought that up because when you vote for something, you vote for everything that person doing or standing for. You can't pick and choose what you voting for.
Well, you vote for everything if they told you what they were going to do and they did it, that's what you voted for. That's what I'm saying.
That's right.
Now, are there any comments about what I just said about Christianity? And I know there are some people uncomfortable about this. Audrey?
I don't know if this is taking us off in a different direction, but my question is, most of us did embrace that Christianity for many, 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 many years. So how do we unpeel the onion, so to speak?
The way that we embraced it based upon what I'm about to talk about. When you know better, you do better. When I read this book, I kept rereading it. And during the course of my being away, during the time that I was away, it hit me like a ton of bricks. One section in this particular book talks about how Christianity indoctrinates us. The book is pretty much an autobiography of the man who wrote the book, Malidoma Patrice Somé. He talks about how he became a Christian. And he starts with, he gives a background into his life in the village in Africa, in what is now Burkina Faso. It was Upper Volta at one time. And he talks about his experience with his grandfather. And he talked about how his grandfather taught him. And in that setting in the village, the grandfather is the one who guided the grandson. And he talked about his introduction to an understanding of what we were taught to call witchcraft. The shaman, the holy man in the village was his grandfather. And he talked about how they consulted the ancestors and how the ancestors sometimes that energy returned in the body of another person. And he talked about how the grandfather would see things before they happened. And any one of you who've read this, please interject if you feel free to interject. He talked about all of that. And he also talked about how the priest, the father from the Catholic Church would come into their village and how he had indoctrinated his daddy. And then, and I'm trying my best to get through this without making it too long. And then he talked about how he was stolen from the village at around age 4. And this was the common practice of Christianity, to take the young boys and young girls from the villages at a very young age. And in doing so, he talked about how when he first went to the village, how much he missed his mom, how much he missed his family. And he spoke concerning, he said that he was crying out for his mom. And the father, I'm just gonna call him priest because I can't call him father. That just didn't come out my mouth right. So the priest who had stolen him took him to this school, I guess it was. And when he cried out about missing his family, he asked the priest, why was he taken away from his family? And the priest said nothing. He just beat him. Now, he just locked him up in a room and closed the door and walked away. And he cried and was beating on the door. And that's when he was beaten with a whip. And he was beaten so brutally until he ended up in the dispensary. And they beat him. His back was scarred from the beating. And this was the beginning of the indoctrination. What they actually did, excuse me, they beat him in order to discipline him to the point where he would be under their total control. And he when he started classes, there were, in every class, if they got something wrong in terms of an answer, they were beaten. He talked about how he hit over the head with a stick. And the one who was beating him, the ones who were brutalizing them, was not the priest. It was the teachers. And the teachers were, guess what? Africans. So what I'm trying to say to you is this. during this period in Africa, which is no different than the period prior to this, as well as to when the Native American kids were taken away from family and put in schools, they beat them if they spoke in their language. They beat them. If when they learned French, if they injected a word in French, then they were punished for it brutally. And then as they got older, there was a skull of a goat that they had to wear around their neck if they spoke a word of the, what is it, the Gara? The language. And what you had to do in order to get it from around your neck, excuse me 1 second, please. Just give me a minute. What you had to do to get it from around your neck was to listen for another student mispronounce something in French or interject a word of their native tongue. And then they would have to wear it. So what they did, they taught them to be, what you call it, because I don't want to need the word stitch either. They taught them to punish each other. They taught them to punish each other. And in doing so, they were teaching them not to trust each other. And the enforcers of this were Africans and not the white man. And when as they got older, they realized that their hormones were kicking in. And
before you go, hello everyone, this is Sheldon.
yes, sir.
To your point, right quick, that particular area was extremely eye-opening to me for as well. And when he was talking about the goat just now and everything that they did to punish them, can please say it again?
Can you speak up for me?
Sure. Give me a second. I'll take. Give me a second. I'll put the phone.
What we
How's
going to?
that?
Okay, go ahead. Ron, is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. It made them and taught them also to be extremely shameful for who they were and where they came from and their ancestor connection, their connection to the Creator. It also introduced, it took them in a way from the Creator and introduced them to this God, but the God that they were introduced to was not benevolent and nice. It was extremely brutal. It did nothing but torment them. It was full of hate, and it was full of punishment. And all of those things that, and it was done systematically. It literally was beat into them in a sense. And what Pastor Richard was talking about in terms of that guilt and that from which they came, if you will, for lack of better words, that European guilt for what they done and they carried with them. That is what it is that with Christianity, in a sense, we embody. Those things are passed on in Christianity teaching, even if done so subtly. All of those things are actually taking place. When you think about, just very quickly, Christianity in this country and how it operates, you think about the current, you think about evangelical Christians and things like that. Though it may come with a painted face, if you will, in all actuality, all those things that I just described is what takes place. There's the force behind evangelicals. I'm done. Pastor Richard? Hello? Everyone hear me?
Mute, Pastor.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, ma'am. They got to the place where the speaking, if they spoke any portions of their language, it was a sin. If they did anything that they were accustomed to in their village life, it was a sin. Everything that related to being African was a sin. And it became a sin simply because the priest said it was a sin. And the African males who were over them reinforced it by beating them. So it taught them to for some of them anyway, it taught them to hate where they came from. It taught them to believe that ancestors were demonic, or the belief in ancestors was demonic. It taught them to believe that their language was also demonic. And everything in their village life was demonic. And the only thing that was acceptable to God was what the priest told them was acceptable to God. And in doing that, when these young men reached puberty, they began to ask each other questions about the girls, because they knew girls were around, but they didn't know exactly where they were at that time. So there were also an older group there of boys who were much older than them. And as he put it, everyone knew what was happening. Those boys were allowed to come in and sexually abuse the younger boys, literally engaging in sexual acts forcibly with them. And eventually they had some ceremony, and I'm skipping a lot of stuff, of course. And in having that ceremony, I don't remember which Catholic holy day or whatever it was, they were there in the chapel with the girls. But the girls were in the balcony and they were on the floor, backs to the girls. And they did not allow them to have any interaction with the girls. If they did, they would beat them. So, is there any question as to why these kids who were abused, this first sexual encounters they had was with other males? Is there any question about why a lot of them ended up with males as a sexual partner? This is the same Christianity that America used when they brought enslaved people to this country, when they brought Africans to this country and enslaved them. This is the same Christianity that they used, the same Bible that they wrote, the same principles that we were taught. We were taught that God is brutal. We were taught that if we did not preach what the white man said to preach, then we were wrong. We were taught that anytime that evangelical Christians made a statement about what should be a sin, we were expected to follow it. A case in point is what happened to Carlton Pearson in Oklahoma. When Carlton Pearson said that he did not believe a just God would send people to hell simply because they had not heard of Jesus, when they had no opportunities to hear of Jesus. And the white preachers in Tulsa, Oklahoma, from Oral Roberts and Kenneth Hagin, all of them condemned Carlton Pearson. And the first Sunday that they said, if Carlton Pearson did not seek forgiveness for what he said, that his people should walk away from him, and they cast him outside of their group, of their little organization. And 6,000 people walked out of Carlton Pearson Church in one day. And before a month was over, Carlton Pearson had no one, not enough people there to maintain his ministry, all because white people spoke. In Dallas, Texas, Southern Baptists were meeting. And the Southern Baptist leadership at that time said that the Southern Baptists should seek forgiveness for having supported slavery. And I never will forget this. One of the preachers who voted for it was from a church in Columbia. And I can see the church, but I'm trying to remember the street that is on because all are familiar with it. And they told him, they meaning the deacons in that church, told him to rescind his vote. And if he didn't, don't come back. And he did it. This is the Christianity that we were taught. And this is the Christianity that we embraced. Now, how is it possible for someone in Africa, and this is one of the things Some addressed, how is it possible for us to think that any leadership in Africa who are African can be compassionate when they had the same education as he got, meaning that they were brutalized, they were forced to embrace the principles of Europeans and not the principles of what they were taught. They did not understand the brutality that they had to endure. They did not understand why they had to call a man father and he had no wife and no children and wasn't looking for one. They did not understand why one of the priests there would call them into his presence and force them to strip naked and sit on his lap. They did not understand that. And they did not understand how is it that everything that they had been taught for hundreds of years, for thousands of years, for millions of years, they had been taught, all of a sudden became a sin simply because Europeans said it was a sin. And right now, the way that this is continued is not so much by brutality in a physical way, but it is intellectual brutality. It is intellectual genocide. When you think like an African, when you employ the culture of African, you are deplored as being demonic. You are outcast for being demonic. If you ask questions about ancestry, you are deemed to be demonic. If you talk about how there are in the midst of you shamans who are shown things from the other side, who have interludes or have interactions with ancestors, you are considered to be demonic and possessed with a demon. How is it that this demonic possession did not come into play with us until Christianity was introduced from the Europeans? Christianity that to this day allows priests to molest children and none of them go to jail. None of them are punished for it. This is the same Christianity that we sit under every single Sunday at 11 o'clock. The same Christianity that has been the arm of what is called soft power. And when that soft power is rejected, the army comes in and enforces that power. That's what happened in Africa, and that's what's happening today. You can say what you will of me. When you listen at what comes across that pulpit, that what comes across that pulpit is only what we have been told to preach through generations. And the same darling, Paul, who is the darling of the Catholic Church, is also the darling of the Protestant Church. And this whole thing about Jesus, how is it that you can talk to Jesus, but you can't talk to an ancestor? How is it that the only people who personified Jesus were white people? How is it that we can take communion, whether it is substantiation or constitution? One, consubstantiation is when it is transformed into the actual body as you eat and drink it. Subconstitution is the priest prays over it, and the wine and the bread, when he touches it and puts it on your tongue, this is it changes when it embodied, when you swallow it. Why do we believe that we are drinking blood, eating flesh, mimicking cannibalism? And it is justified as having its origin in the God that created everything in this earth. When the cannibals in history, the history speaks to us about the settlement in this country where they cannibalized each other. Europeans cannibalized each other. They dug up dead people and ate them. And that was the Christian way. I do believe that we are at this space in understanding how the African, how the children of a Kabbalah became Christians. It was not because we wanted to. It was because if we didn't, we knew that our children were going to be brutalized, as well as the people in the village. We became Christians, yet there was something in us that told us that the entity called God that we serve was not the same entity that the Europeans served as God, because the entity that they served justified all the brutality that was meted out to us. And I'm not using the word people of color on purpose. I'm talking about us. It was meted out to us. And now here we are, embracing the same indoctrination. And our ancestors, and I'm not talking about necessarily ancestors who became ancestors on the continent. I'm talking about us in the diaspora. Our ancestors in this country knew that something was wrong with the preaching. Something was wrong with the words because it did not make sense. And they did not know where it started. They did not understand what was wrong in it, but they knew something was missing. And here we are, a generation who've been asking questions and getting no answers, of finally beginning to see what our ancestors were searching for and didn't see. Knowing that something is wrong with this, now we see what was wrong with it and what is still wrong with it, but we also see that when our ancestors were talking about something is wrong with this, because the God that I knew, that I know, would not justify what they do to us, the lynchings, etc. The God that I trust would not bring their children to a lynching and keep fingers and toes for souvenirs. We are answering the question. We are the generation that's pointing out what's wrong with this whole thing called Christianity. We have been shown that people who were on this earth only came into existence rather around 10,000 years ago, have taken away from the people who've been here millions of years their culture, their understanding of spirituality. And we are embracing that and saying that it is the only thing that's right, because we don't know any better. And now that we are seeing better, now that we are being shown what is, it is incumbent upon us to embrace it. Why? Because our ancestors, whether on the continent of Cabelon or whether here, our ancestors paid one hell of a price to get us to where we are. And they did what they had to do in order to make sure that we got to this space. They knew that one day we would be free. And the freedom of which I speak is not being freed from the physical shackles. They knew that our soul would be free someday. They knew that the brutality of physicality bruises the soul and harms the psyche. They sought the freedom for us to make our own decisions, for us to be who we were created to be, even though they did not understand it. And there is no doubt in my mind that those of our ancestors who sat in churches Sunday after Sunday, embracing and worshiping a God that was forced on them, but at the same time, understanding or feeling that this God is not the God that I serve. I believe that they're the ones who's guiding us today. I believe that they are the ones who's showing us the pathway of righteousness. They are the ones who are seeing it as it should be. And they are the ones who are giving us divine intervention. I believe also that that is one of the reasons that we have so many apparitions of our ancestors. The reason that we hear them, their voices, and we talk about their visitation, and we talk about the feelings like something is close to me, or something is in my room at night, and you're not afraid of it anymore, what you once were, because you were taught to be afraid of a ghost when there was no such thing as a ghost. Now, when you feel something close to you, and your quote unquote hair stands up on the back of your neck, those kinds of things, our ancestors are visiting us like never before. When I look at my camera, nobody is there, even though the doorbell was activated. That's the energy of ancestors letting us know they're around. I believe that. That little voice inside of you that tells you to slow down, that's an ancestor. That voice inside of you that tells you don't go that place tonight, or don't go down that road. That's the voice of the ancestors protecting you. And to veer away from that protection means that we put ourselves in danger. It means that we have chosen to worship a false God. We have chosen to worship a God that has done nothing except brutalize us. When we know that the creator of everything that is not that God, when we know that righteousness, that loving kindness does not come from a God that justifies lynching and white superiority. And that's exactly what Christianity does. And you say, if I'm not a Christian, what am I? If I'm not a Muslim, if I'm not a Jew, if I'm not a Hindu, what am I? I say to you, you are spiritualists. You are Elohim. You are the one who was brought into this earth in order to teach the Neanderthal how to be human, how to dispose of all of the energy of evilness and brutality and genocide in their heart. There is no way that you can be human and do what is happening in Gaza this day. There is no way that you can be human and embrace that. There is no way you can be human and embrace anything that's happening in this country that's directed towards the immigrants right now. And when when ICE were overheard on a recording saying you have no rights, they mean that. Did you know that you don't have to be a high school graduate to be a part of ICE? All you got to do is be one who applies and willing to brutalize and have a permit to carry a gun. That's it, in order for you to be a part of ICE. So who do you think is behind those masks? This is not the God that we are, that created us. This is the God that was created in those villages. And when these young men grew up and became priests, they were not sent back to the village from which they came, but they were sent to other villages and to do the same thing that was done to them. And as they got older, some of them became presidents and premiers of countries with that same mental attitude, with this same lack of empathy, with that same with those same frozen emotions. And that is the reason we are seeing and have seen what we see in Africa and other countries today. That if the white man didn't say it, it is not true. And it is easy for us to fight against each other because in East Africa, especially, if you're not a Christian, in Uganda, if you do those things like homosexuality or several other different acts or things, it's a sin because white people said it was a sin. You can go back in history and you will not find any place where homosexuality was a sin until white people manipulated the scriptures. Any questions or comments? Sheldon and others,
Pastor.
am I on point?
Yes, sir. You're
Hello?
definitely on point.
Okay, someone else was
Well-
saying something?
Yeah, good morning, Pastor. Good morning, everyone. This is GC. Pastor, you were speaking about the concept of communion in terms of the elements of the, the bread and the wine. And I thought about in terms of baptism, water baptism. Again, I think we were, taught, at some point where whether it was submersion or whether it was being sprinkled. But, what are your thoughts in reference to going back to a Kebelon in terms of water baptism? I know, again, John baptized with water, but with the Spirit. But were there any thoughts that you have in reference to how it relates to the beginning of our understanding of water baptism, or was that something that, again, that was created or indoctrinated to us? That resonates.
There is no such thing as water baptism. And again, this brings discomfort, but it's just the truth. Even the New Testament tells you, Christianity tells you right in that Bible that there's no such thing as water baptism. When John says, I baptize with water, but there's one who shall come who will baptize you with the Spirit. And that one was called Jesus. What was John saying? John was saying that I baptize you. You have been immersed in the spiritual essence of this earth consciousness. But one shall come who will baptize you, who will immerse you in spirituality. And when the idea, the concept of deliverance become real to you, then you will be immersed in spirituality and you will become a spiritual being. You will become a deliverer. That's what John was saying. And even the words that were supposed to come out of the mouth of the entity called Jesus said that he baptized with spirit and not with water. So that is the immersion has nothing to do with water. Water represents or mimics spirituality. Why? Because without water in the earth, there is no life. Without spirit, there is no life. So the consciousness of the earth, it sees the water as being indicative of a physical form of spirituality. And one of the major reasons is that if you look at the makeup of water, and what you will see is that it is made of hydrogen and oxygen, and they are gases. So gases float. So how is it that water is on the ground instead of in the air? These concepts in earth consciousness mimics what's the consciousness of those who are earthbound, which are us, and it guides us to spirituality. It guides us to understand who we are. And we will never get that from Christianity. We will never get that from Islam. We will never get that from Judaism. We will never get that from Hinduism. All of these isms were brought into existence by manipulating what the Cushites taught as they moved around the world. And, and yes, all of us have been baptized with water, as far as I know anyway. However, that water baptism had its genesis at the same place that this God that was created to enslave or justify enslavement has its genesis. And that is in the evil, dark recesses of the mind of Neanderthals. Does that help you, George?
Yes, that helps me, because again, we have been taught in terms of hell and damnation and, some of the doctrine and with regards to salvation. And, it makes it much more, clearer to me in terms of just being able to, be aware of Paul's teachings and how that was used to control and manipulate us. So I appreciate, you sharing that. And it made me just again reflect on, something that you mentioned in reference to, Carlton Pearson, because he had, wrote a book that God is not a Christian nor Jew or Hindu, but at the same time, he talked about, again, busting grandma and grandpa out of hell in terms of just what we were taught. So definitely it resonates with me, and I appreciate your comments on that. Thank you. I'm done.
Now, thank you, sir. And by the way, for those who don't know, Carlton Pearson transitioned a few years ago. And I think the burden of what he was going through had a great part in that. And It does not surprise me, would not surprise me rather, if his energy was not also a visiting spirit with us as we travel through this minefield of truth. Carlton Pearson was I met Carlton. I've been to his church a couple of times. He was a humble soul, and it didn't surprise me when he came out with what he said about people not going to hell because they never heard of Jesus, and what George has mentioned about hell and heaven. Hell is on the earth. Even the Bible tells you that. When you look at heaven and hell in Revelation, when it talks about that hell and death shall be cast into the lake of fire, when you look at that, it's talk about a place of repose, a place of pleasantness. So how is it that all of those who supported lynchings were preachers, evangelical preachers, Southern Baptist preachers, Northern preachers who supported lynchings, who supported taking a human and cutting his fingers off while he was alive, dousing him with gasoline and sticking a match to him, and leaving there and going to church. Where the hell? Where are they? If there is a hell, it's overcrowded. How is it that you have to this day people who are benefiting from that? How is it that you have them and they are benefiting from enslavement and brutality, and they still support it to this day? And that is the reason they don't want to talk about us being enslaved, because all of that comes with that. And yet, the same people who support this, overtly support it, are the same people who tell you going to hell. The reason nothing changes is because nothing changes. Meaning that the foundation of Christianity that we were taught, the foundation of it is murder, is genocide, is hatred, is racism, is misogyny, is rape, is murder, is all those things. That's the foundation of it. And if you don't believe it, search it for yourself, and you will find that everywhere Christianity went, that was exactly what I just described. And it's still true to this day. So we have to make a conscious decision. Are we going to believe the truth? Are we going to believe the reality of what's been manipulated in the scriptures? Or are we going to trust who our ancestors trust? Are we going to embrace? Let me put it this way. If Joe Biden or Obama has said to us, return to your master, be humble, and obey your master. In other words, don't be upset because you have been blocked from a career, and everywhere you turn, you get a job that pays you just enough money to survive, even though you have greater qualifications. Obey them. Stay in that position that you are in. Would you support Obama or Joe Biden? No. But that is exactly what we are told. That's exactly what is imposed upon us. and it has nothing to do with our origins, our spirituality, the nature and essence of who we are. It has everything to do with a Neanderthal / European mindset. And we have to make choices about that. Questions, comments? Okay, let me ask this.
I
Is there
think it's
anyone who says Ashe to that?
Ashe. But I think it's
Ashe.
interesting what you said about baptism, because I guess all the people's Baptists literally translate that as to mean that we should be water baptized. But forgetting the other part.
Yeah.
So just think it's interesting that that they would take the literal translation and not accept the other part. But the
But
other
that's
thing
what
I
they were
wanted to
taught.
say too is, are you saying then that in Africa there needs to be a purging of Christianity?
Absolutely.
And I think that if I'm not mistaken, the author of that book isn't he the husband of the woman who wrote The Spirit of Intimacy?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But I'm seeing now why it has to be younger people in Africa who are now stepping up. Because if the older generation were indoctrinated in such a way, then it has to be the young people who step up to sort of right things. But I also know that, especially in Kenya, even though people profess Christianity, it's they're not quite as indoctrinated as you might think, especially the younger people. They will profess to be Christian and they will go around asking, are you saved, blah, blah, blah. But they're not as quite as indoctrinated as say the older generation. So I think it's gonna take them stepping up to sort of purge themselves of some of that stuff.
I agree with you.
Anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
I agree 100% with that. My experience in Haiti years ago was with Christians, or those who profess to be Christians. And one of the churches that I spoke in when we were leaving, this young lady was writhing and going through some changes. And I'm like, what's wrong? And the pastor said, and the one who was my escort said, she is being initiated into, she's becoming, I forget what they called it, but it's equivalent to a shaman. They accepted that. But they did not want to accept some of the anthems that were sung because they did not make sense to some of them. I experienced a lot in Haiti, being in the midst of those who profess to be Christians, that is totally African. Quite a bit. So the most indoctrinated people with Christianity is us in the diaspora in America. It's us. We have we have allowed Christianity to take a stronghold on us. We dismiss ourselves from our families if they say that they are not a Christian. we dismiss ourselves from our family. If I say I'm a Muslim, how is my family going to deal with me? They go tell me I'm worshiping the devil because Allah is not God. Well, Allah is God in Islam. I mean, in Arabic. How? It just doesn't make sense. So Africa has to purge itself of Christianity, number one, but also of Islam. Christianity and Islam are the most dangerous belief systems on the continent of Africa and in the world. Islam and Christianity are very dangerous. And both of them are religions that are enforced with violence. And we absolutely see what Judaism is by looking at Israel. Questions, comments?
Both of them also suppress the feminine aspect of divinity
Yes.
to a strong degree.
Oh, yeah. To a degree that's beyond anything that we would consider doing anyway. Questions, comments, and any additions to what we are talking about or what we have talked about?
I guess one thing you said that I had never given any thought to. It sounds simple, but we've been taught to dismiss the ancestors, yet we embrace Jesus. So one group has died that it is sinful to talk to, but one man died, one fictitious man died that we're supposed to embrace. I hadn't put that together. I hadn't thought about that.
But in your subconscious, in your psyche, it is easier for you to accept that because within your psyche, there is the energy that has embraced those who have transitioned in terms of ancestors. So when you flip that switch and you use these visual aids to help convince you, it doesn't take, that's not a big jump when you use those. Why? Because that's what you see. And we've been taught to see with our eyes and not our eye, because to talk about the existence of a third eye is demonic. Everything African is demonic. And a lot of what we are seeing, we have not seen it before. But all of it begins to make sense. And I hope that it makes sense to you guys as well. Questions, comments? Okay.
Hey, Pastor, this is John.
Uh-huh.
A lot of stuff that you had said, it makes sense to me, and plus I'm still, like they say, digging in myself to try to let that, open me up more. Cause we just been, it ain't genocide. It's almost like genociding in a blind like way. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, it is genocide. It's emotional and mental genocide. It's killing our emotions. It's killing our desire to think for ourselves, to think in a way that's not European. And in school, they were told, this is the white man's way. So, yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying, Charles. We are who we are because of what we've been indoctrinated with. Any other questions or comments?
Now I see why we doing what we doing, so we can be. So the scales on my eye could be falling to where we can see a different way than we've been seeing. But that right there's been it been so doctrinated in us. It's hard. I mean, it's very hard because we just been beaten and killed and pushed into this so hardly, and we just can't. It seems like we can't see no way out of it.
And that's what
And it's a hurting. And that's a hurting feeling.
you're right. That's what we're doing. We are marking a pathway out of it. That's what we're doing. Think about it.
Yeah.
Every group of people on the face of the earth believe in ancestors. Every group of people on the face of the earth listen to a shaman. Every people on the face of the earth believes that we are one with the earth, except Europeans, except Christianity, except Islam, except Judaism. Every one of us. That in itself should be a red flag. Just that simple thing should be a red flag. And the reason we've not seen it before is because it wasn't time. Someone had to be raised up to have the intestinal fortitude to persevere without caring anything about what people said or made efforts to do to them. Someone had to be raised up who trusted the Creator to the point where death did not matter. Someone had to be raised up who was willing to put it all on the line for what they were being shown. And here we are, putting it all on the line for what we have been shown. We are the embodiment of every ancestor that has gone before us. We are the embodiment of what the ancestors are showing from the other side and have shown. Who do you think inspired us to question everything? Who do you think that brought us together and showed us the necessity of putting things in the macro? There is not one African group or tribe, whatever you want to call it, on the continent who does not believe in one God, one creator. The multiplicity of gods is BS. Africans do not believe that. They believe in one creator and the school of ancestors who guides us, who protects us, who mitigates the fear that so many of us have, and give us the strength to say what we see and not be concerned about what's on the other end of what we are saying. That's it. I'm done, unless there are questions or comments.
I have one more question, Pastor.
Yes, sir.
Now, through all this, and the one that died on, before us didn't understand, didn't know. So how's God going to take care of that? You understand what I'm trying to, tell you?
I don't.
A lot of us don't die believing what the Europeans don't told us. and they were so deep into it, and they hadn't changed because they didn't understand the change. But a lot of people stepping up now and trying to make that change the way God had us to be. You understand what I'm trying to say now?
Yes, I do.
Yeah,
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Go ahead, George.
yeah, and if I may, Charles, just to piggyback off of what you're saying, I had an experience this week, with some youth, basically 9 to about 13 years of age, and I mentioned the question, what is our ancestor? And this 9-year-old queen basically said an ancestor is someone who has died, but is still guiding and still leading me with regards to, her journey. And so for her to be able to just acknowledge the fact of the importance of a grandma or grandpop or an ancestor, and for her to know that she's still being guided, through the spirit, that, really just, brought some compassion to my spirit, just to know that they're picking it up, Charles, because again, someone is putting it out there that our ancestral and intelligence, our ancestral connection is something that our kids, are hopefully taking more of an opportunity to talk to their, their grandparents are still living, or their family members who can just share that kind of wisdom. So I don't know if that helps, Charles, but just to hear it from a youth, that age, that kind of just gave me just a reassurance to know that we're doing what we're called to do, if that makes sense, Charles.
Yeah, I like that.
It makes sense a little bit. It makes sense. In time, it'll wake me up a whole lot more.
Yeah, and that's why we do what we do, Charles, because all of us bring our spiritual continence, to our time together, and in ways that sometimes we can't explain it, but it's moving through the spirit of us just being able to put it out there in the macro. So again, as I say, our life journey and the experiences that we're having, is just awesome, when we can be still and receive it in a way that love is being shared, in that loving way through humanity. I'm done, Pastor. Thank you. Let me
Thank
share.
you. Thank you. I
So
want
most
to,
of what you're saying, when the one that died not knowing, but when they leave this side and get with the ancestors, that's when it starts understanding. They know all then they'll be able to help us to catch on, to understand what's really going on. So that's what we talking about now.
yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Pastor, if I may add an example to what Charles was asking, that is discussed in the Bible, and I can't remember who it is in particular, and we kind of lost sight of what the message was in the Bible. But there is someone who dies, it may be Davy or somebody, and goes to hell and says, "Oh my God, I see the truth now. Can I go back and tell my brothers?" What we got locked in on was, oh, he died and went to hell. That wasn't the message of that. I see, based on what you've said today and what we've taught and what we're learning, the true message is that even when you cross over and you may have been unaware, and I'm using crossover loosely, when you transition and become the ancestor, let me say it that way, an ancestor, everything is revealed to you. Because if an entity supposedly could see from hell what was right, what happens to someone who was forced to take on a religion based on everything you've said today? This wasn't our choice. This is what we were forced to have to believe, and we acquiesced to that and conformed to that. And as a result,
Yes.
that's what we try to live according to. Yes, Charles. Or did somebody call me?
I
Can
thought
you hear me?
that- yeah.
Oh, okay. But if I'm seeing that correctly now, I see that in a whole different light. The intent there was not for us to get caught up on a place called hell that doesn't exist, but it was for us to understand that because there are nuggets of truth hidden in everything in the scriptures. And the truth of that passage of scripture is that we see. When we leave these bodies, we see clearly, if I'm saying that the correct way. What do you think, Pastor?
You're right. We do see clear. Well, think about this portion of scripture. The spirit man knows all things. The spiritual human or the spiritual entity is aware of everything. So when you transition, you are aware of everything. I agree wholeheartedly with everything that you've said. And you are absolutely correct with all the scripture. The attempt with it to pervert it has retained its truth. And if when it says that if they knew who they crucified, they would not have done it, right? If they had known what they were doing in manipulating the scriptures, they wouldn't have done it. They would have destroyed it. All the sacred writings would have been destroyed as opposed to manipulated. They took the philosophies and understandings of a people and attempted to use them against them by manipulating it, and ending up, the truth that's beaten to the ground shall rise. There is no death for truth. Every lie is transformed because the energy of that lie is shown through truth. So every scripture holds a truth. There is a container of truth in every single scripture. The Bible is a reservoir of truth. We just have to depend on the ancestors to help us decipher it so we can be the spiritual entities in these bodies who are aware of everything. Thank you.
No, thank you and Kathy, because y'all helped my heart to understand.
Thank you, Charles.
You're welcome,
Ashe.
Charles.
Yeah, that was the point about baptism too, is not to get caught up in the act of water baptism, but to realize that the real baptism is the spiritual one.
Yes.
But everybody got caught up in the water baptism and
Yes.
forgot about the other.
And we forgot that the African used water for hygiene and for cooking. And realized the essence of it in terms of that it can wash away physical impurities, just like the spirit purifies spiritually. So and we can go on with this because there is so much there that we were taught, but now we're seeing it differently. Now, please understand this. Please do not detest your religious journey in Christianity or what Islam or whatever. Do not detest that. Don't be ashamed of that. Because if you are, then you are ashamed of truth as well. You had to come through the trenches of religion, the trenches of lies. You had to be a strong spiritual soldier to endure, to survive the warfare in order for you to be able to separate the wheat from the tare, the truth from the lie. And if we had not been steeped in religion and Christianity, we would not be where we are now. It is no different than saying that in order for stuff to be drawn out of you, you have to live in the house of Pharaoh, because you living in the house of Pharaoh shows you what needs to be drawn out of you. Our Pharaoh has been the house built on lies and called Christianity. And we see the tenements, we see the principles there, and now we're able to decipher the truth. And not only are we being brought out of being purged, we are purging others who we don't even see. Does that make sense, guys?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm done. Questions, comments? Otherwise, as Ron say, this is a good place to pause. Right, Ron?
Enjoy. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
It is.
Thank you for your presence.
everyone.
And we will look forward to tomorrow, 11 o'clock. Bye.
Until tomorrow.
Bye.